Hey everyone, welcome back to Hanging Out for a Living. I've got a real treat for you today. You may have heard of the brand new YouTube channel called Bootstrapped Unicorns. It's taking the entrepreneurial world by storm. And today, I've got the mastermind behind it all. It's my friend Josh Pies, and Josh is no newbie to the entrepreneurial journey. He started his first venture at the age of 4. Yes, 4, and knows firsthand the roller coaster ride of building a business. With this podcast, he's shedding light on the stories and experiences of some truly remarkable individuals. So let's dive in. Josh, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's really cool to see you again.
It's great to see you. So let's dive in, as we said, and your journey as an entrepreneur, as I had said earlier, um, started when you were 4 years old.
It
So can
did.
you share with us a little bit about that start and how it ignited the passion you have for entrepreneurship today?
Oh, absolutely. So, when I was 4, I went, and so we know entrepreneurs usually are trying to solve a problem and then they're going to sell the solution to the problem. Well, I, of course, had no way of articulating that as a 4-year-old because I was 4, but I did find a problem. So I would hang out at my friend's house, Jeff Cooper. He was my playmate in the neighborhood. And his mom, Dolores, was very well organized and she never lost her car keys, ever. She always knew where they were. Where were they? They were on the key rack by the garage door. Okay, simple. This is not a major revelation. However, my mother lost her car keys all the time. We were a family without a key rack. And so
Uh,
it would either land in her purse or on the kitchen countertop or in a drawer or in her coat pocket or somewhere else. So I noticed and I told my grandfather, I said, Grandpa, Mrs. Cooper knows where her keys are. Mom does not. Can you and I build a key rack? Because that's what Mrs. Cooper uses. So my grandfather, being the person that he was, now he is an executive at Kodak. He ran the roll coating division, industrial engineer by trade, had his own
wow.
wood shop at home, very industrious when it came to home projects. He built the addition on his house. He built the
Oh,
pool
wow.
on the house,
Oh
put
my
in all of the
gosh.
piping and plumbing and the pumps and built a housing around it, maintained all the cars himself. This is this guy. And so me
Yeah.
as his grandchild, he's like, opportunity. He was going to teach me how to make that. So he did. Most people would teach you how to make a single key rack, and it's a great experience because you learn how to use some tools, you learn how to measure.
Sure.
That's great. That's not my grandpa. My grandfather, he took me to the hardware store, and we at first we drew it. We drew the plan. Then we went to the
Ah,
hardware store and discovered we could not buy a 6-inch wooden dowel. They sold them in 4-foot lengths. So my grandfather in the middle of the store goes, well, what are we going to do with the rest of the dowel? I said, well, put it in your wood pile. And he goes, no, 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 that's a waste. How many more could we make? So he made me sit there as a 4-year-old. I wasn't good at math yet, but at least I could imagine it. And we imagined how many more we could make using a tape measure that we had there, and we figured out how many pieces of wood would turn out of the right 6-inch cuts. So now I know I've got material for a whole bunch of key racks. Then we go buy all the other parts, and the other parts, the little hooks that we put in there
hmm.
come as a 100 pack. Well, I needed
Wow.
5 for my design. If I need 5 for my design, I have 20 worth, and I can get approximately 6 dowels worth. And so, like, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all this overage. I'm starting to understand. So Grandpa said, so what are we going to do? So, well, we should make more than one. And he goes, well, why would we do that? You only want to give one away. So my first solution was I'd give some to family. And he goes, oh, that's sweet. I like that. That's
Yeah.
generous of you. And he goes, we still only have 4 households that we can identify that need key Rex. You still have 2 more. What do you do with the other 2? And I didn't get it. At first I was not connecting. He goes, we're going to sell them. And so he walked me through how to price them and put markup and profit in there. And so this was, it's 1984. He cut me loose and he let me go door to door and sell them. And when you add cute factor, I was 4 hawking my own wares. I made them, and so this is a kind of a big deal. I mean, these were stained, they were varnished, they were, sanded edges. I mean, we really put some time into this. I remember selling them for $2.50, or you could get 2 for $3.50. So I almost always sold them in pairs. And I was going door to door. And after I figured out how to make those, we made more. And I mean, lots more. And I
Wow.
remember this lasted for a couple of years. My parents were called into my kindergarten classroom because there was something wrong. And what was wrong was I refused to play with the other kids because they weren't serious about business. So I was drawing flyers on how to advertise my business and drawing up marketing plans as a 5-year-old in kindergarten.
Ooh.
And the teacher just didn't know what to do with me. But I was $1,600 cash positive my first 12 months. And what's really cool is my grandfather even said, he goes, he taught me about interest.
Yep.
He was the bank. I had to pay him back for the materials. He was not a partner. He was the bank, but it was zero interest because he was grandpa.
Okay.
Um, but I was responsible to pay back my creditors. And so I learned business and manufacturing and sales and marketing from 4 to 5 years old. And I realized I was actually not only comfortable with it, I enjoyed it. I was good at it. My family was borrowing money from me. I was four and a half.
I love it. Oh my God, what a great story. That
Yeah.
is that is awesome, and that actually launches us into our next question. And so, in your first episode, you touched upon the impact of a great mentor, and here you talked about your grandfather too, right? Could you share a bit about what that mentor was to you? I know you talked about your grandfather, but I'm sure there have been others, and how their guidance has shaped your path.
Yeah, so mentorship is an interesting thing because now that I'm 43 and I have employees that I really care about and a couple of young men around me that I really care about, I'm trying to think more as a mentor and
Hmm.
spend time there. So I actually think about this a lot. And my grandfather was absolutely certainly my first and probably most impactful mentor. Um, and mentorship is an interesting thing because it's not always necessarily business, but we entrepreneurs absolutely need to find mentors. And if you don't have one readily, finding, social media influencers that you feel like you can trust to allow to be an e-mentor until you find the human where you can ask direct questions is a good step. But yeah, my grandfather definitely, and then he's actually a client now, but my uncle Seth, who is my grandfather's son, has
Hmm.
always been, and he would say he hasn't been a mentor. I think he's very humble. Um, but he's an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur in the audio, video, and lighting world. And
Ah,
he started training me in the technologies that I'm very comfortable with since I was about 11. Um, he he works very, very hard. And I watched him. I didn't know it was through the hard years of business, the ones where it wasn't profitable and where ends weren't meeting. But
sure.
I saw him never giving up in a way where his example was mentorship. And then his mentorship for the first, I don't know, 10 plus years of me spending time with him was almost all technical. And then I would say work ethic, morality. He was truth is my own father, was kind of awful. He's a career felon. He had had so many bad business deals where people were actually trying to get back at him for all of the negative that he had done,
Right.
that he was not a good mentor, and he didn't really spend
Yes.
time trying to pass that down either. But had I spent more time with him, it could have gone really haywire in my life. He could have been a negative influence, and I could have been the Rochester mob boss. Um, and that really is like that was a potential career track had he had more influence than he did. But between my grandfather and his amazing son, my uncle, I had the benefit of strong moral men who understood business and understood that I need to spend more time with them than my own dad. And
Absolutely.
so Seth, my uncle, has been a guide, like I said, work ethic, morality, and technologically, until I realized how much of an entrepreneur he was and is. And
Sure.
then I started really watching and asking questions. And the things he'll say, he's not one of those guys where I call him every week and get wisdom from him. It always comes at the right time. I don't know how that works, but as a mentor, I think he senses it
Sure.
and it just comes. So he's been those two, the Waltz men, Ed and Seth, have been probably the greatest influences. but I've had others too.
Sure.
Pastor Steve Edlin from Faith Temple Church, or now Faith Church in Rochester, New York.
Mhm.
He's been privy to a lot of the family things in my world, and his life has had similar crossover with storylines that seem strikingly similar, and so he's always been one to help me. He's been my moral mentor. Now, I wouldn't call it
Mhm.
spiritual advisor. He is that in general. He's a pastor,
Sure.
but there's a lot of life decisions that sometimes you need to run past somebody, or you need to see how this lines up with walking as a good trustworthy man. And manhood these days frankly is being challenged in a
Yeah.
way where what is that line between this mythical toxicity and the high quality strength that we need for men to be the leaders that they're called to be. And you need men like a Steve who can weigh in on that. And so I've
Right.
had just those three, and I think it doesn't stop there. I probably could come up with a huge list. Um, and mentors do really well, probably even better when the mentee knows they're a mentor.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I would say with Steve, for instance, I didn't consider it mentorship until I was older and I knew what a mentor really was.
Ah,
And I'd started
okay.
mentoring, and then I realized that's always what he was doing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. Mentors, I know in my life and people that I've known, I've often heard it said that I wouldn't be where I am today if I did not have my mentors, right?
That's
And
right.
it's so great when we have that because then we can pour into others as well. And so I have a confession to make. I've been stalking your Bootstrap Unicorns YouTube channel. Okay, I admit it. And in there, you've mentioned guests, right? An array of guests, etc. And from a former Blue Man Group lead, uh, believe it or not, total sidebar. My son actually sold his guitar to one of those guys
No kidding.
way back. Oh Lord, I don't remember when, but it was a long time ago. Yeah, I couldn't believe it when he said,
They're a cool
"Well,
group.
yeah, they are. They're absolutely awesome." And so I digress. Sorry. And to like successful restaurateurs, um, all also incredibly fascinating. So, a question about how do you go about selecting your guests, right? And what's the common thread that ties all their stories together for Bootstrapped Unicorns?
Well, so the Bootstrapped Unicorns as a podcast is in some ways my attempt to become Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
And so I'm a big Think and Grow Rich fan. And while it's not, it's not the good book in the sense it's not the Bible, but
Right.
and also there's a lot of people who have challenged Think and Grow Rich as if maybe Hill was a charlatan and he made up a lot of his stuff. Who knows? But the principles in there are pretty sound. Um, the story, as Hill would have us believe it, is that he shadowed Andrew Carnegie and got to meet all of his friends and learn what the success matrix would be. What are all the elements that go into becoming a successful business person, and that was where he got the content for his book, so that we
Sure.
readers could become those successes. And there's a lot of people who aren't readers, and there's a lot of, actually, if you read the original Think and Grow Rich, the references are very old. I mean,
Yes.
he's talking about things that were culturally relevant pre 1937.
Right.
And so when you read it, if you're not somebody who's got enough of an old soul to recognize the references, it actually could be very cryptic. And I wanted to spend time doing what he claimed he did, and pay attention to the success theories that are coming out of successful people. And I would argue that most successful entrepreneurs right now have a sense of where they've had their wins, their losses, and how they came about them, but they're not spending time writing down so they can pass on how they found their successes, and so that we younger, newer entrepreneurs can maybe try to follow in their footsteps. This is one way we can do that. And so when I meet somebody, I want they don't nobody has to be a millionaire. It's one thing. It's like there's no net worth that
Okay.
qualifies you to be on my show. What qualifies you to be on Bootstrapped Unicorns is that you've got a clarity about your journey that allows you to tell truth in a way that becomes instructive. And so we want inspiration. I think inspiration is important. That's kind of some personal fuel for every viewer and listener in a way that allows them to keep going, right? Sometimes you just need
Right.
that inspiration to get over the next hurdle. Sometimes you need it to get over the next hour, depending on how your
True.
life's going. And
Yep.
so if some of these stories can be inspiration that somebody else survived a situation, found a way to get past it, and hey, buddy, you can too, that's good. But I really want to also arrive at understandings of like what decision was made here in order to unlock the next step. How, for instance, you mentioned the restaurateur, Steve Gunter. Steve is wildly successful. I don't know his net worth, but I'm sure it's seven figures plus. And he and his business partner are amazing people. And I learned very clearly that they've understood each other's roles, the dividing line between their strengths and their weaknesses. And so while she's running operations and making sure that the machine has all of the wheels greased, he is good with finances. He's great as a front man who can be out with the on the floor building relationships, but his clarity about how to treat employees is otherworldly. And not that his partner understands it through and through too. They cherish their employees. But what I learned from Steve as a huge success is he doesn't even consider the success his own. He has the ability to empower his people in a way where they're driven towards their own individual and group successes. And that's really instructive. Anybody who's got employees, how do you build an environment where people are healthy, happy, empowered, on the
Right.
same page, working for a unified goal? Steve helped me learn that. So I learned that as the host,
Sure.
and whoever gets to watch that show is going to get the benefit of his knowledge. And interestingly, when John Tankersley, the owner of GetHomeInsuranceNow.com, was on, he had a similar story that his business partner that rose him to millionaire status on his previous business was a guy who, his name's Frank. Frank was Mr. in the office, running processes, getting everything dialed in. John was Mr. Sales and Mr. Relationships. And so they understood their strengths and they could come together and complement each other. And so finding those partnerships where they can edify each other and work on separate things and not cross over
Right.
was really, it's yet another data point that explains that. So this is what I'm looking for. You don't have to be a millionaire. I just picked two that work, but
Yep.
you do have to. One thing I don't want is I don't want people in distress.
Yeah.
People who are in current distress should be watching the show and learning from the people that we have on.
Right.
People in distress maybe should have a great coach and a great mentor,
Yes.
but they're not ready to be on the show. I call them pre-ready. They're pre-ready because I believe in people and I believe in entrepreneurs who never give up, will go and find their way, and then they'll have the story with the
Yep.
knowledge and the
Exactly.
tactics and everything. Then we want them on the show. Until then, we want them working on their thing.
Absolutely. So we'll close out with the final question here. So, any challenges or hiccups you've had to face in launching Bootstrapped Unicorns, and what has really been the most surprising or rewarding part of the journey so far?
I'm going to be totally transparent here. Okay. So, that before Bootstrapped Unicorns, C47 Films, my business, has always been a
Yeah.
film and television production company with a focus on advertising. And though we still do those things, I really believe in our mission to help businesses unlock their ability to do content at scale, big, massive amounts of content, but do it in an efficient way that's affordable and easy on their time. That's what I wanted to start doing. So, this new studio that I'm filming in is a pretty high tech place. We've got multiple cameras, we've got multiple feeds, we've got a live switcher, we've got all these things. We're leveraging AI like crazy to pre edit all of our eventual finished edits. We're doing a lot of really smart things, but how do I get the word out and how do I introduce it to my target market? The truth is, it's this show. I have guests on who are either ideal referral partners or ideal clients, and I have them come on and hang out. We have a great interview right in this space. They see
Mhm.
how my people operate and that we're a family and we're a team and we're efficient and we're fun. And then I start getting phone calls a week or two later. All right, I see what you're doing. Can I do it too? So that's actually kind of the business model behind our whole show. And in the process, I've discovered a couple of things that surprised me. One, our first, second, and third generation of how we thought we were going to have systems and processes in place were required steps, but they're not what we're doing right now. We've learned it's kind of like we had a 1.0 idea. This is how it's going to work. And we're like, oh,
Okay.
but this broke, this broke, this broke, and this broke. So we got to fix those. Now we have a 2.0. And they're like, oh, but one of those things introduced a new problem. And so though I thought it was going to be turnkey in the sense that I have a great idea, let's implement it and go, it's a great reminder that everything's always in flux, always in motion. No matter how set in stone something is, we are
Sure.
going to have to change and adapt as we learn. And so we're still learning, and I think we'll always be learning. So it's a good, hard, expected, unexpected reminder. It's this really kind of influx experience.
Right.
Another thing that I've discovered the hard way is on September 22nd, I was rear-ended in a car accident that sent me to the hospital. I feel generally pretty good. I'm on a ton of painkillers every day still. But I've got a lot of injuries that I've now been told from 3 different doctors will be permanent.
Hmm.
And I'll get back to life in general, but I stopped recording for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And now we're back, and I think we're going to stay generally on schedule, but the best laid plans of mice and men. We got behind.
Yes.
And the outside world I don't think generally knows it. We've kept up with our content, we've kept up with the show. It's because I had stuff in the can already. And
Right.
so one of the things that I learned the hard way is while a lot of my clients and myself included would like to film our first 4 or 5 shows and release immediately, what that doesn't give you is the luxury of breathing space.
Right.
And it just so happened when we were filming that I did have a whole bunch in the can. And actually, the day prior, on the 21st, I had filmed a handful of episodes. So that on the 22nd, when that happened, my team, who they just showed up, I'll tell you, and they're always great and they're always wonderful, and I knew it, but you don't appreciate people until sometimes there's crisis and you get to see how they respond.
Right.
Kept going and kept creating on my behalf while I'm laid up in bed. I was at the doctor 6 times a week for the first 4 weeks, dealing with stuff, and just travel time, doctors, painkillers, sleep time, exercises, if I could implement them, all of that stuff. I was working probably 50, 60 hours a week on my health and 5 to 10 hours a week on my business. I wasn't creating, and we'd oopsed into making it okay, but now I know it can't be an oops. We have to be ahead. We have to help our clients be ahead. We have to
Right.
prepare for something to change in our availability and know that we'll catch up on the padding, but we always have to have padding to let us be able to
Exactly.
catch up on the padding.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I'm so glad that you're doing well. I heard
Thank
about
you.
the accident, and I know we've been in touch, but it's great to see you. Um, you're I would never know. You're your vibrant self, and you've got great color and a great smile as
Thank
usual.
you. I'm
And I
feeling
just
pretty
want
good
to
right now. Yeah.
yeah, you look great. I mean, I would have never known had you not shared it with me, in our earlier conversations. But I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today, Josh, and for giving us
Thank you.
this sneak peek into what Bootstrapped Unicorns has in store. And everyone who's watching, if you're an entrepreneur or even if you're just curious about the journey, connect with Josh directly. His contact information is going to be in the description of this video. And don't forget to subscribe to Bootstrapped Unicorns on YouTube. Um, there you'll get to dive into the world of entrepreneurship, get inspired, and remember, we were all beginners once. So let's continue the conversation with Josh and join his ever growing community of unicorn enthusiasts. Cheers, everybody. Until next time. Bye bye.
Thanks again.